I'll be happy enough for both of you.
My sister stole my husband, Mike. She sent me an invitation to her wedding with Mike, trying to show off, but
I'll go with your mom.
We're going to give them hell.
normally, my parents are kind and hardly ever get angry, but they've had enough of my sister's wrongdoing. They attended the wedding with a menacing smile, turning the celebration into a nightmare. I'm Victoria, 24 years old. I work as an illustrator. I was newly married, not even a year yet, and my husband, Mike, and I had a good relationship. I met Mike through friends, and it didn't take long for us to start dating. He proposed to me at a restaurant with a view of the night skyline. I remember our wedding being a joyful event. Family and friends offered their heartfelt congratulations, and there were smiles all around. One day, as I was about to send Mike off to work, I noticed he left his smartphone in the living room and brought it to him. Mike, you left your phone. I handed it over to Mike, who seemed a bit flustered as he took it.
Oh, thanks, that helps a lot. Gotta run.
Mike hurried out, but I felt a bit uneasy about his rush. That was the first sign. After that, he always carried his cell phone, even when he was at home. Despite my suspicions, I convinced myself that Mike wouldn't cheat. We had a good relationship without major issues, so I believed everything was okay. However, my trust would be shattered. One day, after hanging the laundry, I returned to the living room and noticed a notification on my phone. There was a message from an unknown account.
Hey, long time no see. How have you been?
It seemed like the message was from an acquaintance, but I've heard of scams in which the sender pretends to be someone you know. That's why I decided to ignore it. If it was important, they would call.
Just kidding. Don't ignore me. You've read the message, right? Ignoring your sister, that's just like you. Always so mean.
I closed my smartphone once. But when my phone rang again, I was surprised to see a message saying, "Sister," from an unknown number. Indeed, I have a sister, Susan, who is problematic in various ways. For example, money issues. Susan often borrowed money from friends for various reasons and then disappeared without repaying, which frequently led to me and our parents facing the consequences. And my parents were paying back on behalf of my sister. Then there's the complaint issue. Susan would immediately lodge complaints about even the smallest issues. She was an extremely troublesome complainer, hurling insults at people who came to apologize. And problems due to relationships with men. Susan likes men, and she likes to steal other people's lovers. She didn't care about her friends or relatives, she took ownership of the men she targeted. Indeed, because of her behavior, she frequently clashed with friends, causing trouble that often spilled over to me and our parents. I didn't want to have anything to do with my sister, and I lost touch with her after she left home. However, the message on my smartphone contained the word "sister." If this was my sister herself, I had a bad feeling and hesitated to reply, so I decided to leave it alone. Whether it was Susan or someone pretending to be her, I didn't want any involvement. But the ignored smartphone kept ringing annoyingly, so I decided to open it to block the number. To my shock, I found a message.
If you're going to ignore me, that's fine, but Mike is mine now, so let's get the divorce over quickly, okay? Thanks for finding me such a great catch. Mike won't return to you, so I'll send his divorce papers, alright. Get them filed soon.
At the same time, I received a couple-shot picture of my husband and Susan. Without needing further confirmation, I knew it was true. My hands trembled holding the phone, and I sat down abruptly. I felt my blood run cold, realizing how pale I had become as a great shock overwhelmed me. As Susan said, Mike never returned home, and only the completed divorce papers arrived. I tried to contact Mike, but he completely ignored me. My happiness was suddenly taken away, and I was overwhelmed by sadness, anger, and a whirlwind of emotions. I became emotionally unstable. Why? Mike. I cried every day. After a few days, when I had calmed down a bit, I decided to contact Susan. What's the meaning of this? Let me talk to Mike.
After ignoring me for so long. No greetings, no apologies. What do you mean? What's the meaning of this?
What? You're the one who should be apologizing. Just send Mike back here for now.
No way. He doesn't want to return. He loves me way more than he ever loved you. And why should I apologize? It's your fault for not being able to keep him.
Nothing I said got through to her. My mental state was at its worst, and I grew tired of worrying and thinking about everything. I've had enough.
Finally realized it's hopeless. He'll hate you more if you have feelings for him. If you resent it, resent your unattractiveness. Loser.
After this exchange, I closed my smartphone. I was fed up with dealing with Susan and had run out of patience with Mike, who had chosen her. Before I knew it, I found myself filling out the divorce papers. Thus, my marriage, which was supposed to be happy, came to an end. Afterward, my life became a mess. My mental damage was so severe that I couldn't eat and felt more tired than usual. My colleagues at work worried about me because I was so haggard. I said I was okay, but my mind and body were at their limit and I finally collapsed at work. When I regained consciousness, I was in the hospital with my parents and a close colleague by my side.
Victoria, can you recognize Mom?
Victoria.
Hearing their voices, my consciousness cleared. Looking around, I realized I was in a hospital and tried to recall my last memory. Well, I collapsed at work. My father sighed with relief.
We were shocked when the hospital called. Are you overworking yourself?
I knew that wasn't the case. It was probably the accumulated fatigue from the ordeal with Mike and Susan. Yeah, maybe. As I said that, my mother pressed the nurse call button to summon a doctor. After being examined, it was decided that I should be admitted to the hospital for observation.
Did you eat well? Did you get enough rest?
My father bombarded me with questions, full of concern. As I assured him I was okay, my mother asked him to get some drinks and something easy to eat for everyone. He agreed and left the room.
Hey Victoria, something must have happened, right?
I thought so too. What happened to you? You seem to have lost weight recently. This has never happened to you before.
They say women have strong intuition, and it seemed true. I sighed and explained the situation to them. I found myself crying in the middle of the explanation. I overstepped my limits without realizing it. I thought I had settled it in my mind, thinking it's okay, but I guess I didn't really understand myself. As I forced a laugh, my mother tightly held my hand.
I had no idea all this was happening. Why didn't you tell us sooner? It's the first time I've heard about your divorce.
In front of your mother, I'm sorry to say, but is your sister sane? I can't believe it.
Both expressed their anger towards my sister, and I could feel their genuine concern for me. I didn't want to worry or bother anyone, thinking I could handle it myself. I didn't want to cause trouble or concern for anyone. I also felt embarrassed and thought there was some truth in what Susan had said. Maybe it was because I wasn't attractive.
That's ridiculous. What are you talking about? Anyone can see that what your sister and ex-husband did is unthinkable.
Nancy is right. You've done nothing wrong. I'm so sorry you've been carrying this burden alone.
Both looked like they were on the verge of tears. I regretted that I should have relied on them. My mother, considering my mental and physical health, suggested I come back home for a while. Given the doctor's advice that I needed rest, Nancy offered to handle the paperwork at my company along with my medical certificate. When my father returned with the drinks and I told him about resting at home, he immediately said I should come back soon. Later, Nancy managed to explain the situation well at work, and I received a message from HR saying, "You have plenty of paid leave saved up, so take your time to rest." After thanking Nancy, she told me, "You can always rely on me." I spent the next few days at my parents' home. Nancy came to visit, and I could see that my mind and body were recovering well. I realized that keeping everything to myself was not good. Today, Nancy came to visit again, and as we were enjoying cake prepared by my mother, my smartphone rang. When I opened my smartphone, my heart raced.
Hello. How are you doing? Thought you might be curious about what's going on with this, so I decided to give you a buzz.
It was Susan, who I hadn't been in contact with since the incident. Regretting my carelessness in checking the phone, my face must have given something away, as Nancy's expression changed.
What's wrong? Are you okay?
Well, yeah, I'm okay. I responded, but it was obvious something was off. Nancy asked if she could see my phone. Wanting not to worry her but remembering my resolution not to keep things to myself, I nodded and handed her the phone. Nancy's expression turned puzzled as she looked at it.
What is this? Is she picking a fight? It's your sister, right?
When I nodded in agreement with Nancy's words, she closed the smartphone.
Just ignore her, seriously, block her. You don't need to deal with people like that.
Following her words, I opened my phone again to block Susan. Just then, another message from Susan came through.
We've been living together smoothly since then. And guess what? I'm pregnant. You're probably thinking, so soon, but nope. You see, Mike and I have been in a relationship for over 6 months.
The word pregnant made time stop for me. During our marriage, we were trying to have a baby. We hope to be blessed with our baby soon. This message tore at my heart, especially because we had been trying together. I burst into tears, and Nancy took my phone from my hand in surprise. After reading the message, she yelled out,
What? Unbelievable. I'm so furious I could explode. You should sue them.
Suing them in court. It was something I had considered when I first received her message. But I had lost the energy and had given up. I just don't want to be involved anymore. Hearing me, Nancy calmed down.
I'm sorry. I got too emotional. You're right. You don't want to be involved, and that's for the best.
Nancy comforted me by rubbing my back, and her kindness allowed me to cry freely for a while. Then, seeing my state, my mother came into the living room.
Hey Victoria, actually, I haven't told your father about this yet.
I understood what she meant by that. If my father knew, he would be furious.
But I think it's better to tell him now.
My mother's solemn words deeply resonated with me. I fell into deep thought.
I think it's better to talk about it too. This is just too much.
With Nancy's agreement, I decided to tell my father. My mother said she would talk to him, so I left it in her hands. When Nancy left and evening came, my father returned from work.
Well, something smells good. What's for dinner tonight?
Hi, welcome home, Dad.
I'm home.
According to my mother, my father had been in a better mood since I came back home. My father is a man who is seldom grumpy. But my father seems happy every day, so my mother told me that she is happy to have me back. Her words sincerely made me happy, and I felt grateful to have such a comforting place to be. However, today, with a serious expression, my mother began to talk to my father.
Welcome home, dear. I wish we could have a normal, happy chat, but there's something important we need to discuss.
Seeing my mother's expression, my father seemed to understand and became serious. Looking at me, he said,
It's about you, right? Let's hear it properly.
His face was kind, and just seeing it made me feel like crying. After I explained everything to my father, his expression remained calm, yet there was an aura of anger and fear.
I see. Victoria, don't block her yet.
Really?
You don't have to read the messages, but wait before blocking her.
Following my father's advice, I nodded. There must be a reason for my father's approach, I thought. My mother also respected my father's judgment in such situations.
For now, Victoria, don't block Susan. Just ignore any messages. It might be good to inform Nancy, who has been supporting you.
I see.
Thank you for telling us. You're okay, Victoria. You have your dad and mom here, and Nancy too.
Comforted by my parents' kind words and smiles, I felt relieved and began to cry. Seeing me, my father and mother laughed. My heart felt incredibly warm. That night, I shared my discussion with Nancy, who responded with encouraging words.
It's great that you have such supportive parents. And you have me too.
Looking at the night sky, I truly felt the same. After the discussion, I decided to move out of my house. Although by moving, I mean returning to my parents' home. Nancy suggested this move since my workplace was within commuting distance from there, and it would be better for my mental health than staying in a house filled with bad memories. The rental contract was in my name, so I proceeded with the cancellation and sent Mike's belongings to his parents' home. On the day of the move, I also completed the mail forwarding process at the post office, successfully finishing the move. I bid farewell to the kind building manager with a smile and was able to leave cheerfully. Then, I began living at my parents' home and successfully returned to work. My colleagues were very concerned, but I was able to genuinely smile and assure them that I was okay. My boss also advised me not to overdo it, making me appreciate my supportive workplace anew. Several months later, I'm home. I arrived home. My mother greeted me with a serious expression.
Welcome back, Victoria. We need to talk. Please come to the living room as soon as you've changed.
Yeah. All right. Seeing my mother's serious expression, I sensed something was up. After changing into my casual clothes and going to the living room, I found my parents with puzzled looks, staring at a letter in front of them. I hesitantly took a seat and looked at the letter placed in front of me. An invitation.
Yes.
My father murmured in response. It seemed to be a wedding invitation, but I wondered why it was problematic. May I look?
Yes.
I picked up the invitation. When I checked the sender, to my surprise, it was from Susan and Mike. What? My exclamation slipped out unintentionally.
We forwarded your mail since you moved. Remember, this arrived at your previous address.
That's right.
No wonder both of their faces looked troubled. However, I felt surprisingly calm. I used to be greatly shocked, but now I'm just appalled by their actions.
Are you okay?
My mother expressed concern. My father also looked at my face. I'm surprisingly okay with this. Just looking at it makes me feel more astonished than anything. Though, I wonder how far they want to go in demeaning me.
That's right. Even though she's my daughter, this is beyond what I can tolerate.
I'm glad Victoria isn't too shocked, but this is definitely going too far.
I could almost see flames behind my parents, who were angry on my behalf. I was thankful for their support. It's addressed to me. I don't have to go, right? When I asked, my parents looked at me intently.
I'll go with your mom.
What?
We'll show them what hell looks like.
What? I was upset because it was the first time I had seen my usually gentle parents get so angry. But it's addressed to me.
Well, we're the bride's parents. We must attend.
Exactly right. It's our daughter's wedding, after all. Looking forward to it, right, dear?
Yes, indeed.
My parents exchanged smiles. I could only give a wry smile in response. When I told Nancy about this, she didn't seem surprised at all and said,
Aren't your parents right? If you're related to the bride and groom, you have to attend. But wow, a wedding, huh?
I could tell she was smirking even over the phone. The people around me are supportive but also intimidating when angered. On the day of the wedding. Are you really going? Is it okay? Watching my parents prepare to attend the wedding, I asked anxiously.
What are you worried about? Everything will be fine.
My mother said this with a smile, but her eyes weren't smiling. which made me feel uneasy. Both parents continued their preparations, unfazed by my concerns. Is this really okay? Despite my worries, I heard the sound of the car arriving. When I went to check if a taxi had been called, I saw a familiar car parked outside. To my surprise, Nancy emerged from the car. "Nancy, what are you doing here?" I exclaimed, opening the door. Nancy, dressed in a party outfit, looked radiant.
Good morning. Are your parents ready?
Just answer my question first.
I'm going to the wedding, you know?
What? As I stood there in shock, my parents came out of the house. When I asked what was going on, it turned out that one of Mike's relatives was a friend of Nancy's. After learning about the situation, they arranged for her to attend the wedding as that relative's girlfriend. My parents didn't object. Instead, they seemed to think it was a good idea to go together. As I wondered what they were all thinking, Nancy said,
I can just sit by after what happened to Victoria.
I got it. Despite my anxiety, I responded that way. Then, my father, mother, and Nancy left for the venue in the same car. I started to feel maybe I should have gone too.
If you want to see, I can show you via video call.
However, perhaps sensing my feelings, Nancy said that to me. I decided to indulge in their offer and stay home alone. But curiosity got the better of me, so I contacted Nancy and asked her to connect me via video call. Upon arriving at the venue, my parents and Nancy headed to the reception. Thanks to Mike's relatives' arrangement, Nancy's name was on the list, but my parents, not having been invited, were not listed. The receptionist, flustered, said they would check, and just then, Susan arrived. Seeing my parents, Susan was visibly shocked and unsettled.
Why are you here?
Well, we are your parents, so of course we came.
There was some mistake, and we didn't receive the invitation.
My parents replied. Susan forced a smile.
Well, the invitation was actually for Victoria.
Yeah, I was surprised when Victoria told me. I had no idea about the wedding. We came because Victoria said she couldn't make it due to work.
It's fine to send an invitation to Victoria, but you should have sent one to us too. It doesn't look good if the bride's parents are absent, does it?
My father repeatedly mentioned the absence of their invitation. I couldn't see my parents' faces through the video call Nancy was sharing, but I could imagine their expressions.
Yes, that's right. I'm your daughter, after all. You must be happy for me.
Susan, misunderstanding the situation, genuinely believed my parents came for her sake. I thought to myself what a naively optimistic person she was. When Mike appeared, he turned pale at the sight of my parents.
Relax, Mike. They came to celebrate with us. They must love me so much, especially after how Victoria acted.
Mike was relieved to hear Susan's words and greeted my parents with a smile. Mike's parents, my ex-parents-in-law, joined in, creating a friendly atmosphere. I remember being adored by my ex-in-laws, so it hit me a little hard to see them talking happily. I felt a slight shock, wondering if they were nice to me only because I was the son's wife. Maybe it was the right decision not to go. I murmured. After that, the scene shifted to the wedding ceremony and then to the reception. At the reception, Susan and Mike made their entrance, looking happily in love. Nancy occasionally asked if I was okay, and I found myself surprisingly unaffected, reassuring her, I'm okay. I was more concerned about her phone's battery life, so when I mentioned it, Nancy assured me not to worry because she had brought a portable charger. How well prepared she was. And when it came to the thank you speech for her parents, Susan became impatient because she did not expect her parents to attend. Seeing it, my parents asked the MC for the microphone.
Today, we weren't supposed to be here, so it's understandable that Susan isn't prepared. Therefore, we'd like to surprise her with a message from us.
The audience applauded at my father's words. Susan, thinking she was being helped, smirked and clapped along.
Dad, I'm so happy.
The exaggerated gratitude was grating on my nerves. I continued to watch, feeling displeased. My father, with a sly smile, started something unbelievable.
Here's a surprise from my wife and me.
When my father spoke, the doors of the reception hall suddenly opened, revealing several men standing there. They all looked indignant. What's going on? I quietly watched, curious about the unfolding scene. Susan turned pale at the sight of these men.
Our Susan, being so charming, seems to have garnered affection from many men. Being kind-hearted, she appears to have responded to all their feelings. Truly, we are very proud of her. These gentlemen wanted to surprise her today, so we brought them here.
Wait, Dad, how did you?
Susan, I had no idea you had such a considerate side. Now, graciously accept this surprise.
Following my father's words, men surged onto the stage, their anger palpable. One of them grabbed Susan's arm as she tried to flee and said,
After all the other men, now you're getting married.
How much do you think I've spent on you? Pay back the money I lent you.
Shouts and accusations filled the air. Susan turned pale and was on the verge of tears.
Wow.
Nancy remarked calmly while I was in shock.
What's going on?
Mike also spoke up and confronted Susan, but she was too shocked and disturbed to respond, her pale, unsettled appearance clearly visible. Then, my mother took the microphone and announced,
There's another surprise. As my husband mentioned, our daughter Susan is quite popular with women too.
Following her words, several women in attendance stood up.
We've also invited some ladies who eagerly wanted to see Susan.
Next, following my mother's lead, several women approached Susan, closing in on her.
You stole my man, and now you want a happy ending for yourself?
You need to pay me alimony for cheating with my husband.
As soon as I lent you money, you cut off all contact. Pay it back now.
The situation was total chaos. The reception hall went beyond buzzing to downright infernal. I thought the guests would be shocked, but few of them were buzzing, and they were all appalled at her. My parents, still smiling through it all, were terrifying in their own right. And I understood my parents' evaluation of my sister. In the midst of this battleground, a person took the microphone.
Susan, we are impressed that such a charming person is our son's bride.
Surprisingly, my ex-mother-in-law made this unexpected remark. As I wondered what she was talking about, she continued.
It may not match the wonderful surprise prepared by Susan's parents, but we have also arranged a surprise.
Mike, stunned by his mother's words.
What are you talking about, Mom? Can't you see what's happening?
Ignoring Mike's attempt to calm the situation, my ex-father-in-law took the microphone.
Firstly, we would like to thank Susan's parents for their fitting surprise. I run a company, and I had decided to remove Mike from his successor position. That's our surprise.
What?
No way.
Susan and Mike were dumbfounded by his announcement. I knew from my marriage that my ex-father-in-law was grooming Mike to take over his business. I'm also surprised by the statement that he is going to change that.
What are you talking about, Dad?
You made your decisions. You chose to cheat, to divorce, and to remarry. You've managed all that, so we think you're better off starting your own business.
It's supposed to be me, the successor. You're joking, right?
Mike was wide-eyed and panicked at his father's words.
We're serious. You're already capable of standing on your own. Use that judgment to carve out your life, especially now that you have the wonderful Susan with you.
That's right. I'm proud to have a son who can make such self-centered decisions.
I can't close my mouth from being open in surprise. My ex-in-laws, like my parents, appeared to be smiling, but their eyes were not laughing. Their insides were quite angry. Nancy, overhearing this, chuckled mischievously.
It's so satisfying. I can barely keep from laughing.
I'm just speechless. When I said that, Nancy started telling me all sorts of things. While I was away, my ex-in-laws had come to apologize. They really thought of me as their own daughter. Also, my parents and they had together planned this surprise revenge. Nancy had been in touch with my parents and had also heard from Mike's relatives, so she knew everything. Hearing this, tears came to my eyes, realizing I had so many allies.
You're not alone. So many people care about you and won't stay silent when you're hurt.
Yeah, I replied, crying and nodding. Thank you so much. I managed to express my gratitude, seeing my parents and ex-in-laws smiling kindly on the screen. It was a chaotic situation at the venue, and the ceremony staff tried to stop it. Then, a man stood up and approached the stage. The man stood in front of Mike. Mike turned pale at seeing the man and then collapsed on his knees. The man seems to have said something to Mike. Then, the man returned to his seat. What did that man say to him?
Can't tell from here without a microphone. Let's go ask him directly.
Nancy said, taking the phone to the man.
Excuse me.
As Nancy approached and he turned around, I gasped. Nicholas. Yes, he was Nicholas, my father's brother, which was my uncle. Nancy showed my uncle the screen, and upon seeing me, he was surprised and delighted.
Victoria, is that you? Are you doing well? I heard about today from your father. You had a hard time.
Thanks for worrying me. But I'm okay. By the way, what did you say to Mike?
Well, I told him I'll be suing for damages since this is my hotel, and the wedding reception has caused quite a mess.
My uncle's words made sense to both Nancy and me. And that's why Mike turned pale. After a bit more conversation with my uncle, I felt reinvigorated. Though Nancy tried to show me Susan through the video call, the crowd was too dense to see her clearly. The wedding had transformed from a celebration into something else entirely. I noticed many guests, including some of Mike's colleagues, beginning to leave. All of his colleagues left the hall looking puzzled. I took it for obvious, but my mind cleared. The wedding ended disastrously, with Susan and Mike looking drained and pale.
Then, the bride and groom will exit.
The MC announced, by which time most of the guests had gone, leaving only our parents, ex-in-laws, Nancy, and some of Mike's relatives to applaud. When my parents returned home, they were accompanied by Nancy and Mike's parents. I was a little surprised, but I apologized to my ex-in-laws. I'm sorry for not being in touch. Despite your kindness, I regret that the divorce happened this way without proper communication. I apologize for that. I had felt guilty for not apologizing to them after the divorce, so I took this chance to do so. Then, my ex-in-laws, with tears in their eyes, placed a hand on my shoulder.
We're the ones who should apologize.
My ex-in-laws told me, but I also thanked them for loving me while I was married to Mike. Afterwards, we all had tea and had a friendly chat, and we parted amicably. This was the end of everything, and I felt refreshed. Days later, while at work, my phone rang. Upon checking, there was a message from Susan. Remembering I hadn't blocked her, I checked the message, which was full of complaints.
You ruined our wedding. Take responsibility. You must have ratted us out to the parents, right? Are you that jealous of me? Just because you're miserable, don't push it on to others, you pathetic, envious loser.
I pondered, then asked Nancy beside me. Can I still claim alimony for his cheating?
Sure thing. She kept sending the evidence.
Exactly. I felt completely liberated and decided to hire a lawyer to file for damages. I saved all the messages and images Susan had sent and replied to her. Thanks for all the evidence of the affair. Expect a call from my lawyer, and please stop contacting me directly.
Lawyer, what are you thinking? Stop it.
Susan panicked, trying to delete her messages and images. But I informed her I had saved everything, which visibly shook her, and she began to apologize.
Sorry, it was all lies. I'll even give Mike back. Just stop saying horrible things. Please spare me the alimony. I'm already in debt.
It's none of my concern. I don't want Mike, and honestly, maybe it's good you took him. I don't need a man who cheats. Thanks for saving me from him, Susan. I sent that and cut off contact. After blocking Susan, she tried to reach out through different accounts, which I also blocked. I consulted with the lawyer I was referred to and submitted the evidence. Action was taken promptly. After the lawyer got involved, the next contact came from Mike. He had trouble with Susan and sent me a message wishing me to get back together. I didn't reply and blocked him. He contacted my parents saying, "Let me talk to Nancy," but my parents handled it. However, he was probably scared of my parents and never heard from them since. Eventually, Susan and Mike agreed to pay the alimony, as informed by my lawyer. For a while, Susan tried to use her usual tactic of arguing and complaining, but such methods were ineffective against the lawyer. She seemed to realize that she had no chance of winning and finally agreed in depression. Mike didn't admit it at first, but when he found out Susan had sent me evidence, he turned pale. I regret that these two people hurt me, but I had so many people protect me, and now I have nothing but thankfulness. Later, Susan and Mike divorced. Susan, having no one to rely on, tried to contact our family once, but my parents declared estrangement. Susan hung up the phone in tears. Mike, after becoming the subject of office gossip due to the wedding debacle, felt uncomfortable and eventually resigned. Unable to return to his family home, he is now getting by with part-time jobs. As for me, I received a promotion at work due to high performance. I met someone in a new department and started a forward-looking relationship with him. Nancy is also getting along well with Mike's relative, and we often share our happy stories. We're planning a trip with my parents, Nancy, and even my ex-in-laws next month. Although I once felt like I had hit rock bottom, I am now happier than ever before.